to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite.
They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. I came here to kick some ass just like Roddy Piper. These motherfuckers that walk among us, they got me hyper. But don't be chewing that bubble gum, it's got aspartame. It's a chemical directly targeted at your brain, just like the fluoride that they put in the water supply and all the geoengineering we got in the sky. I'm trying to tell you, and I hope that you're hearing me clearly, this ain't no bullshit speculation conspiracy theory. They live and they're controlling every move you make, from the apartment that you live in to the juice you drink. They give you television to help you ignore this prison while feeding you genetically modified organisms. They want us like the Walking Dead, just obey and consume. Don't worry about anything, keep awaiting your doom. To all my warriors out there, this is indeed my call. It's time to put a fucking end to this elite cabal. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite.
When they try to prove their spinning ball Earth, it's remarkable. All their arguments are absolutely fucking farcical. It's clearly been shown your problems aren't resolvable. Your theory has been blown into tiny little particles. The pharmacological drugs they got the masses on precludes them from putting their rowdy Roddy Piper glasses on. And even when they do, they're unable to gaze too straight, cause for most of them it's way too late for them to see past their conditioning. They will not be listening to anything outside their paradigm imprisonment. They are ensconced in a nonsensical certitude, brainwashed by devils to revel in their servitude. It's idiocracy, pure hypocrisy. Waking these dummies up, it used to mean a lot to me, but nowadays I wanna tip their canoes, and as they drown, tell them this is what you get when you snooze.
They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite.
Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? I was. Look again.
There's no such thing as a boy or a girl.
We sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite. They live, we sleep. The alarm's going off, beep, beep. Time to wake up to the deceit. Our whole reality's made up by the elite.
Either put on these glasses or start eating that trash can.
When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
You are the unvaccinated. You are the problem. It is the unvaccinated who are the problem, period, end of story.
The only people that you can blame, this isn't shaming, this is the truth. Maybe they should be shamed, are the unvaccinated.
It's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks.
Anyone you came into contact with will blame you, as will the rest of us who have done the right thing by getting vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
I think it's time to get our moral house in order, Anderson. It's the unvaccinated who are the threat.
All of us vaccinated folks are going to start wearing masks to protect the unvaccinated folks. It's called
a Christian value.
You're basically punishing the vaccinated for the sins of the unvaccinated.
People are not behaving honorably. The unvaccinated are basically saying, well, it's open season for me. I can do whatever I want as well.
The unvaccinated are basically beating their breasts and running around the country saying, we don't care, we're living free, and so forth.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
The unvaccinated, a group that includes children and people acting like children. And the rest of us are starting to get pissed off.
The vaccinated feel the unvaccinated are making me upset or angry.
This is not about freedom or personal choice.
Well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No. Screw your freedom.
The other day, Howard Stern weighed in with a much different approach. Take a look.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? Their freedom.
But you're treading on our freedom and you're making other people sick, and really you're killing other people.
The anti-vaxxers, they seem to have a thing for death and home remedies.
The anti-maskers turned anti-vaxxers are not just putting their own lives at risk. If that was the issue, we could just say that we can watch them compete to win place or show in the Darwin Awards.
We have to start doing things for the greater good of society and not for idiots who think that they can do their own research.
And don't get me started on the lunatics who won't take any of the COVID vaccines.
Life is too short to be an ass. Life is way too short to be ignorant of the promise of something that is helping people worldwide.
Maybe you're doing it because you're disconnected or disorganized. Maybe you have some sympathetic psychological reasons. But maybe you're just being antisocial.
Oh, you can't shame them. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them silly. Yes, they are.
Those who are not vaccinated will end up paying the price.
The unvaccinated should be taxed. They should pay more for health care.
We need to start looking at the choice to remain unvaccinated the same as we look at driving while intoxicated.
We're going to see, and I've said, almost two types of America.
Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack, yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo, rest in peace, Wheezy.
Pointing back to the unvaccinated who are really creating a problem in this country, every death that we are seeing from COVID could have been prevented.
Literally, the only people dying are the unvaccinated. And for those of you spreading misinformation, shame on you.
A really striking comment that you made in this interview, you said, from a broad public health standpoint, and I'm quoting you now, at the population level, masks work at the margins, maybe 10%.
In the schools, everybody should wear a mask.
Asking kids to wear a mask is uncomfortable, but kids are pretty resilient.
Kids are resilient. And if anything, this is going to build resilience in our children.
Will this have long-term psychological effects on young kids, do you think?
I don't think so. I think, in fact, it's good.
Masking is very important, particularly in the schools. Masks are safe. Masks do work.
I have a 9-year-old. He tolerates masks for everything. I don't hear him whine, just like I don't hear him whine about his seatbelt or his bike helmet.
Children have no problem with what is going on. They want to deal sensibly by way of the science with COVID. They've said we have no difficulty with students wearing masks.
But I look at the history of the world, and when I think of like my parents and grandparents growing up in depressions, fighting wars, kids always had a part to play too. And when I look at the fact that they're just wearing a mask, but they have a roof over their head, they have food.
A mask is basically non-intrusive completely. I've yet to see a child whose mask was bothering him or her. In fact, in the emergency department, the kids are the best ones at wearing masks, and they often help their parents put masks on correctly.
There's nothing adverse or bad about masks. We've used masks for decades. We mask kids in our cancer wards routinely.
We have now a plethora of ongoing research and studies and documents that are showing us that masks do not put children at risk.
This concept that children somehow are harmed or abused by wearing masks is not founded in any science.
It's simple. It does no harm. My kids wear them to school.
The idea that children won't wear masks is actually an abdication of leadership to say that we can't ask them and won't set an example for them.
Those 50 million children need to protect themselves by wearing masks.
If I'm going to get on an airplane, I don't have to wear a mask. but I will have my kids wear one.
I don't think this is politically dividing at all. I wear masks. My kids wear masks.
I don't understand why parents are not listening to the science, not teaching their children to wear a mask.
My responsibility, if I am lucky enough to be the next governor of Georgia, is to look at the science, to follow the protocols, and to set the right example.
I think we're even talking to the children. When we talk to schools and classrooms of children, they are happy to wear masks.
Be comforted by the fact that children have so much neuroplasticity that this is a bump in their social development, but that they can repair very easily.
You don't go naked. And right now, you shouldn't be going to school without a mask.
You're not likely to be able to be exposed to something and spread it to mommy or daddy. And it's not likely mommy and daddy are able to spread it to you either. So I wouldn't worry about it, baby. I promise you. That's why we need to make sure children are wearing masks in school.
You will always have conspiracy theories when you have very challenging public health crises. They are nothing but distractions.
President retweeting a conspiracy video alleging that masks do not work. The video was then removed by Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube because it violated rules against spreading misinformation.
The second most powerful man in the world, revealing himself in this video as a mask truther.
A major study finding masks made no difference in stopping the spread.
Mask mandates, it turns out, were an utter failure. It's not me saying it, but the New York Times. The mask mandates did nothing. Will any lessons be learned? Bret Stephens cites a comprehensive British review of 78 randomized studies with more than 600,000 participants.
So that wasn't scientifically sound.
Effective.
The mask guidance was not
correct. It wasn't science-based, and the 6 feet of distancing was arbitrary.
All around the country, over the weekend, protests popped up. These morons and internet conspiracy theories, demanding an immediate end to lockdowns. And let's be honest, people, this is both insane and counterproductive. Because the more you gather in groups, the longer the lockdown will have to go on.
Did lockdowns during COVID prevent severe effects from COVID-19? Did it help in the arc of the pandemic? Economists from Johns Hopkins say no.
The report warned against using lockdowns as a pandemic measure in the future because of the low effectiveness on mortality and the consequences for the economy.
The lockdowns, in terms of their effects on mortality, we measured it against mortality, were basically irrelevant.
They destroyed people. They literally killed people. When you shut down medical care, in spring of 2020 alone, there were 650,000 cancer chemotherapy patients in this country alone. Half of them didn't get their chemo because they were afraid. They were told it was dangerous to go to a medical facility.
You weighed in on a theory that's been floating around that perhaps the number of fatalities related to COVID-19 is being inflated because people are actually dying of other things. What's your read on that theory?
You know, Savannah, there is absolutely no evidence that that's the case at all. You know, I think it falls under the category of something that's very unfortunate, these conspiracy theories that we hear about.
Even though wackos, Trump wackos are doing conspiracy theories saying those numbers are padded.
What should we say to people who conspiracy theorize about an overcount of the deaths?
Follow up now to my conversation with LA County Health Director Barbara Ferrer, who last week acknowledged the county may be overcounting COVID deaths by as much as 20%.
Could it be a secondary contributing cause? So, for example, somebody with kidney disease, COVID then pushes them over the edge to have kidney failure. That's COVID as a contributing cause. And then the third is COVID as an incidental finding. So somebody coming in with a gunshot wound or a heart attack and they happen to test positive.
Now, part of the conspiracy theory is that the disease started in a laboratory in Wuhan.
Just weeks ago, Dr. Anthony Fauci rejected the conspiracy that coronavirus was man-made in a lab in Wuhan, China. And yet this week, Donald Trump is still pushing the debunked bunkum.
A lot of people on the right love that phrase, escape from the lab, because it sounds like something from a Marvel movie or a comic book.
Everyone who believes in the conspiracy is saying that it came out of a lab in Wuhan rather than through food at a market.
And he continued to push a conspiracy theory that has already been debunked by our intelligence community. This whole notion that the coronavirus was developed in a Chinese lab. That has been debunked.
There's a report today that another intelligence arm of the U.S. government, this is inside our energy department, has joined the FBI in concluding that COVID began with a lab leak in China.
Is that I don't know who to trust.
Yeah.
Right? I certainly don't trust reporters. Because reporters treated this initially as if it was nothing more than a crazy, unhinged conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
So who do you trust, right? You can't trust the legacy media outlets because that was their narrative.
It came out of the city that has the Wuhan Institute of Virology, a Chinese lab that worked on coronaviruses. And that is an awfully large coincidence. And that's what I've thought throughout, that was an awfully large coincidence.
But they're really criticizing science because I represent science.
If you're vaccinated, you really don't need to worry about getting it in a way that's serious or transmitting it.
That is true. That is correct, Chris. It'll either protect you completely against infection, and the chances are very likely that you'll not be able to transmit it to other people. The risk is extremely low of transmitting it to anybody else. Full stop. Vaccinated people are clearly capable of transmitting the infection. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better. If people are not wearing masks, then maybe we should be mandating it. I often myself wear 2 masks.
And I'm quoting you now, at the population level, masks work at the margins maybe 10%. To hear that they only work at the margins maybe 10% would make a lot of people ask, okay, then why was I wearing a mask?
You're really attacking not only Dr. Anthony Fauci, you're attacking science when you say that this is going to go away tomorrow like magic, when you know that there's no chance it's going to just disappear. We hope this just goes away, burns itself out.
So my question is, why weren't you straight with the American people about this to begin with?
So the bottom line is, it's a guesstimate. I gave a range.
It seemed in that quote to suggest that you were basing your recommendation on polling and what people could accept. Is that not what you meant?
No, I mean, it's a bit of that.
We're seeing all of these school closures around the country. Is that the right move for children and families?
And I think what's going on right now is generally an appropriate approach. You want to start doing something to socially distance yourself. How dramatic that is, closing schools and doing other things, should be proportionate.
It went too far, that particularly for kids who couldn't go to school except remotely, that it's forever damaged them.
Well, I don't think it's forever irreparably damaged anyone.
The U.S. Surgeon General has called it an urgent public health crisis, a devastating decline in the mental health of kids across the country. According to the CDC, the rates of suicide, self-harm, anxiety, and depression are up among adolescents.
And the record will show, Neil, that we didn't recommend shutting everything down. First of all, I didn't recommend locking anything down. I recommended to the president that we shut the country down. And that was a very difficult decision because I knew it would have serious economic consequences, which it did. Yeah. Because if you look at the people that are politicizing me, there's somebody that all the way over on one level. But there are a lot of other people who look upon me the way they should, as a non-political person that I am. They're not doing it because they say they don't want to do it. They're Republicans. They don't like to be told what to do. And we got to break that. But now is the time to do what you're told.
Where did this virus come from, do you think, today? Did it come from a lab? Was it man-made?
When you have the animal-human interface and you have animals that come out of the wild that are sold at these open, what they call them, wet markets.
Place of origin was not within the market itself.
No, I don't think you could say that.
There's a report today that another intelligence arm of the U.S. government, this is inside our energy department, has joined the FBI in concluding that COVID began with a lab leak in China.
That the NIH has not ever and does not now fund gain-of-function research
in the Wuhan Institute.
We now know that a bat coronavirus was enhanced in a lab. The National Institutes of Health acknowledged that it funded research of a virus that was studied at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. The experiment unexpectedly, we're told, made a bat coronavirus more contagious than the original naturally occurring one.
Take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans.
Right.
You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about.
They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not. What we're talking about now is the gain of function research in studies that increase predominantly the transmissibility as well as pathogenesis and alteration of host range of the virus. Nobody is lying here, Senator. It is you. I'd have to laugh at that. I should be prosecuted.
Role in this, Ken O'Keefe?
Well, the Greater Israel Project is all about destabilizing surrounding nations, ultimately in pursuit of this dream of Greater Israel from the Euphrates down to the Nile, all the way over to the Eastern Mediterranean. This is the dream of these psychopaths, and so destabilizing governments, creating sectarian strife is all part of that menu and all part of the design to create Greater Israel. So that goes, it's self-evident. But I have to go back to what this gentleman is saying in Washington, D.C. about America not wanting to get involved, or Obama not getting involved. What are you talking about? We have been arming people directly who are Al-Qaeda. Al-Nusra Front is Al-Qaeda. These people are psychopaths to the worst order. They are conducting suicide attacks. They are gassing people. We know, Carla Del Ponte said in May, that it was the so-called rebels in Syria that were using sarin gas, not the Bashar al-Assad regime. No, it was not. We know that the United States president is arming people who are on the U.S. terrorist list. He should be convicted of aiding and abetting, giving material support to a terrorist organization. But then again, you know what? We, the West, the United States in particular, Israel and Britain, are the biggest terrorists on the planet. So our little junior partners in Al-Qaeda, which is nothing more than a CIA database, thus the name Al-Qaeda, this is nothing more than a group of terrorists working together, each playing one different role, but all of them working together for the same goal, which is to maintain this hideous and sick and twisted, unjust world that we have, which is a perpetual state of war. Always one illusion, one boogeyman after another. But the fact is, Obama is nothing more than a puppet war criminal, just like his predecessor and every other U.S. president before him. So please don't tell people out there that the U.S. is not involved. It's directly involved, and it is arming people who are absolute psychopaths. That is what we discussed earlier, the Greater Israel Project, to destabilize any Arab regime which might have any kind of autonomy and self-determination. Any regime in the Arab world that is not an absolute puppet cannot be tolerated. And who are the nations that we target? Those that are not puppets. We don't target those like the Saudi regime, which is the biggest human rights violator in that region. It's cutting off people's heads in public, cutting off hands. It is the most grotesque regime on the planet, and yet we give that regime weapons, and it's no problem whatsoever. The duplicity and hypocrisy of the United States and the West can't even be measured. It is so enormous. And these mouthpieces, such as this gentleman in Washington, is only doing a disservice to himself and his country. And the fact is that American sons and daughters will get involved in this yet again, and these chicken hawks who are pretending to care about the Syrian people are going to be sacrificing not their own sons and daughters. I would like this man to send his sons and daughters and his grandchildren off to Syria when this turns into a greater conflict, because this is what we're flirting with, is a world war, a third world war. This is not a joke. We are flirting with a third world war on the basis that apparently we care so much about the Syrian people, just like we care so much about the Iraqi people and the Afghani people. The only people that buy this sort of stuff are either bought-off prostitutes or the dumbest of the dumb. And we're also led to believe that Assad is the dumbest idiot dictator on the planet now, isn't he? Because he invited UN inspectors to come in, and he brought them in. On the very day that they come in, he decides to attack his own people 10 miles away from where the inspectors arrive. This is beyond ridiculous, and the only people that buy this, again, are bought-off prostitutes or the dumbest of the dumb.
The Greater Israel Plan was actually pre-planned by Theodor Herzl long before, when he said, "The area of the Jewish state stretches from the Brook of Egypt to the Euphrates."
While many groups and governments wish to censor the internet, Israel and its partisans are among the most globally significant. They work to promote the Israel narrative while blocking facts about Palestine, the Israel lobby, and other subjects they wish to cover up. Much of this is done by devoted individuals acting independently, voluntarily, and relentlessly. But many of these activists are part of orchestrated, well-funded projects sponsored by the Israeli government and other pro-Israel groups. They utilize Israeli soldiers, students, American teens and seniors, and range from infiltrating Wikipedia to influencing YouTube. As we'll see, some even operate out of Jewish community centers in the US. One such group is the Israeli military's New Media Desk.
It is well known nowadays that what happens on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube has great influence on events as they occur on the ground. The internet, too, is a battleground. It is thus comforting to learn that the IDF employs soldiers who tweet, share, like, and more.
Another project initiated in 2011 by the National Union of Israeli Students has the stated goal to deepen and expand Hasbara, or state propaganda activities of students in the State of Israel. Under this program, Israeli students are paid to, quote, lead the battle against hostile websites. The students are tasked with what many would call shilling or trolling in online forums and social media. They're directed to create original content in the form of news reports and blogs, edit Wikipedia, inject pro-Israel messages into discussions on social media, as well as to report and remove what they consider to be allegedly anti-Semitic content. It's important to note that criticism of Israel is not the same thing as anti-Semitism, despite Israel's best efforts to redefine the word.
Anti-Zionism is the new anti-Semitism.
Anti-Zionism is anti-history, anti-humanity, and anti-Semitic. It's pure anti-Semitism. Let's use our power on social media to educate our society.
Now, interestingly, this charity, the International Holocaust Remembrance Association, has also given a number of examples of what sort of behaviour should be called out alongside this, which are actions which seek to stereotype Jewish people, to justify attacking or killing them, claiming that the State of Israel is a racist endeavour, or comparing it to Nazi Germany.
When there is dissent expressed in the United States against policies of the Israeli government, people here are called anti-Semitic. What is your response to that as an Israeli Jew?
Well, it's a trick. We always use it. When from Europe somebody is criticizing Israel, then we bring up the Holocaust. When in this country people are criticizing Israel, then they are anti-Semitic.
Now, I know what they do because I used to ask them to do it. I mean, when I was in the Mossad, and we had a guy that gave us problems in the U.S., and he was speaking out, and he was talking like Pete talked once and said, Israel is bombing Lebanon with cluster bombs. We say, hey, who's that guy? You know? And of course the campaign starts, and before you know it, the guy's labeled. And he's an anti-Semite, because that's what we say he is.
Another pro-Israel organization that targets public information on the internet is CAMERA, the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting in America. A 2008 expose revealed a CAMERA initiative to infiltrate Wikipedia in order to rewrite Palestinian history, pass off crude propaganda as fact, and take over Wikipedia administrative structures to ensure these changes go either undetected or unchallenged. Leaked emails from CAMERA called for volunteers to secretly work on editing Wikipedia entries. They were instructed to, quote, avoid for obvious reasons picking a username that marks you as pro-Israel, or that lets people know your real name. The emails emphasized that volunteers were to avoid editing Israel-related articles for a short period of time after signing up as editors to avoid arousing suspicion, and to always log in, because if you make changes while not logged in, Wikipedia will record your computer's IP address. In 2010, two Israeli groups began offering community workshops on Zionist editing of Wikipedia entries with the aim of making sure that information in the online encyclopedia reflects the worldview of Zionist groups.
Moetzet Yesh, in conjunction with My Israel, has arranged Instruction Day for wiki editors. The goal of the day is to teach people how to edit in Wikipedia, which is the #1 source of information today in the world. As a way of example, if someone searches the Gaza flotilla, we want to be there. We want to be the guys who influence what is written there, how it's written, and to ensure that it's balanced and Zionist in nature.
And again in 2013, there was evidence of pro-Israel tampering with Wikipedia when an employee of an Israeli institute called NGO Monitor edited articles about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in an allegedly biased manner. According to the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, Dreiman concealed the facts that he was an employee of NGO Monitor and that he was using a second username which is forbidden under Wikipedia's rules. In 2017, yet another Israeli project was launched with the intention of controlling discourse and promoting a pro-Israel narrative online. Known as ACT-IL, the project uses a software application that leverages the power of communities to support Israel through organized online activity. The software is a joint venture of Israel's IDC University, the Israeli American Council, and another American group called the Maccabee Task Force, which was created to combat the international boycott of Israel over its human rights abuses, which it terms an anti-Semitic movement. The project is also supported by Israel's Strategic Affairs Ministry and Israel's intelligence community. Its CEO is an 8-year veteran of Israeli army intelligence named Yarden Ben Yosef. Israeli media Ynet News reports that the Israeli military has begun scouring Jewish communities abroad for young computer prodigies to recruit for its ranks.
In Operations Pillar of Defense and Protective Edge, we set up the first advocacy situation rooms here at IDC. We operated together with hundreds of volunteers who work around the clock for Israel on social media networks. Through the operations, we realized that when many people work together, it is effective. This understanding led IAC and IDC to partner and found ACT-IL, the online community for Israel.
Jewish news site The Forward calls ACT-IL a new entry into the online propaganda war that has thousands of mostly US-based volunteers who can be directed from Israel into a social media swarm. Its work so far offers a startling glimpse of how it could shape the online conversations about Israel without ever showing its hand. The Forward article reports that the project recruits Jewish teens and adults and sometimes operates out of local Jewish community centers. They are referred to as media rooms, and there are at least 5 of them planned or active in the United States, including 1 in Boston, 2 in New Jersey, and 1 opening soon in New York. After being given ACT-IL advocacy training, the volunteers are instructed to complete missions, which are assigned from a headquarters in Herzliya, Israel. The Forward reports that in November, the Boston Media Room created a mission for the app that asked users to email a Boston area church to complain about a screening there of a documentary that is critical of Israel. The proposed text of the email likened the screening of the film to a white supremacist riot. In reality, the film, Occupation of the American Mind, investigates Israel's PR war in the US and was promoted by respected American progressives, including Democracy Now!'s Amy Goodman.
We hear over and over again that the conflict comes down to Palestinian terrorism and Israeli security.
If rockets fly on your head, you're allowed to defend yourself.
And what gets pushed out of the frame entirely is the fact now that for almost 50 years, Palestinians have been systematically dispossessed from their land and denied their most basic human rights.
They have been able to effectively defend the indefensible to the American public.
The Israeli government is involved in numerous internet projects. Director General of Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs, Sima Vaknin-Gil, told a forum of Israeli tech developers to flood the internet with pro-Israel propaganda. When she was Israel's chief censor, she said, "We censor information that is critical to our enemies, who have no capabilities like us, do not have a Jewish brain, and therefore our enemy relies to a large extent on open information." Her ministry has a budget of roughly $70 million to fight what it calls a war on consciousness terrorism. To win it, she said, Israel must use tricks and craftiness. Another Israeli entity that plays a role in covert internet activity is the Israeli military's legendary high-tech spy branch, Unit 8200. This unit is composed of thousands of cyber warriors, primarily 18 to 21 years of age, some even younger. An article in the Jewish press reports that Unit 8200 has developed a great reputation for effectiveness in intelligence gathering, including operating a massive global spy network. Numerous Israeli tech companies, many of them headed by former military intelligence officers, assist in these online spying efforts, sometimes receiving Israeli government funding for digital initiatives aimed at gathering intelligence on activist groups and countering their efforts. To be clear, this is all part of an effort by an occupying government and its military working covertly to achieve censorship of reporting on its atrocities. Major internet companies have reportedly been cooperating with Israel. In 2015, Israel's deputy foreign minister visited Silicon Valley and met with YouTube's CEO and Google's director of public policy. Afterwards, Israeli media reported that it was agreed that the companies would strengthen ties with the foreign ministry and build a regular mechanism of control to prevent the distribution of these incendiary materials on the network. Google is not the only tech company with close ties to Israel. For example, Facebook's head of policy in Israel, Jordana Cutler, had previously been employed for many years by the Israeli government. In 2016, Fortune magazine reported that Facebook, Google, and YouTube are complying with up to 95% of Israeli requests to delete content that the government says incites Palestinian violence. Among other things, Google said it would increase the number of members of its Trusted Flagger program, which enables certain organizations and government agencies to report content. It also said it would increase support for NGOs and organizations working to present a corrective voice. One such trusted flagger is the Anti-Defamation League, commonly known as the ADL, whose mission includes standing up for Israel. The ADL considers criticism of Israel to be anti-Semitism. The ADL has created something it calls the Online Hate Index, aimed at recognizing what it considers hate speech and targeting it for censorship.
By combining artificial intelligence and machine learning with social science, the Online Hate Index will ultimately uncover and identify trends and patterns in hate speech across different platforms.
A leaked secret January 2017 ADL strategy paper detailed how to counter the pro-Palestine movement. Among its many strategies were some focused on the importance of efforts in cyberspace. The paper called for a mix of policy advocacy and industry engagement with corporations such as Google, Facebook, and Twitter in a manner consistent with the ADL Center for Technology and Society and its Anti-Cyber Hate Working Group. The detailed 32-page document reported that in recent years, a massive investment of resources and talent had been directed against the pro-Palestine movement. One of the results, the paper said, was to create a worldwide pro-Israel network. It was this network that the report sought to mobilize. On March 13th, at the 2018 South by Southwest Music Festival, YouTube CEO Susan Wojcicki revealed that the company has just hired an additional 10,000 people to help review content flagged for removal. She also talked about a new feature that will soon be added to the platform.
When there are videos that are focused around something that's a conspiracy, and we're using a list of well-known internet conspiracies from Wikipedia that we will show as a companion unit next to the video information from Wikipedia showing that here is information from Wikipedia about this event.
So YouTube will be sending people to text.
We will be providing a companion union of text.
Considering what we now know about the efforts of the Israeli government and pro-Israel organizations to edit Wikipedia and essentially rewrite history in their favor, can we expect this kind of companion unit to show up next to our videos? Will our channel be taken down again like it was recently for 5 days? Only time will tell. With so many people working to keep this kind of information from getting out, we never know when we'll be censored again.
Here again, the Luntz document spells out which talking points have been most effective in spinning the brutal reality of Palestinian casualties. He says the first thing the pro-Israeli spokespeople should do is to express empathy for the innocent victims.
Unfortunately, innocents do get hurt, and we really grieve that.
We're sad for every civilian casualty.
The entire situation is tragic.
Once you've done that, Luntz says, you also have to get people to empathize with Israelis by describing what life is like for them, living in constant fear of Hamas rocket attacks. So again and again, we hear the focused, tested phrase, that the rockets are raining down on Israel.
We have thousands of rockets raining down on our civilians.
Rockets were raining down on Israel.
Any advertising executive will tell you the essence of propaganda is repetition.
Rockets raining down on southern Israel.
Rockets raining down on Israel.
Well, Hamas rockets rained down on Israeli border towns.
Then Luntz tells PR spokespeople to turn the tables and ask the American people, what would you do?
So what would you do in the United States?
Can you imagine what America would do if it were facing a similar threat?
We always try to ask you the question we ask ourselves. What will you do?
What would you do?
What would you do if more than 3,000 rockets had been fired on your cities?
What would you do? 3,000 rockets.
What would you do if terrorists were tunneling under your frontier?
What would you do if 3 kids are kidnapped because of a tunnel network?
What sort of question is this? Of course, anybody would act to defend themselves against unprovoked aggression, but it is a question that is completely devoid of any context. What drives a society to a point where after multiple devastating wars, they continue to resist with these most feeble methods? They don't want you to ask that question. They don't want you to ask what is behind this. What's the history here? Who are these people? Where did they come from? Why are they so desperate? No, they want you to understand Israeli behavior. Israeli behavior is always characterized as a reaction to unprovoked violence.
Then on top of that, when massive numbers of Palestinian civilians predictably die from Israeli attacks, Israel claims it's part of a deliberate Hamas strategy to drum up sympathy.
They use telegenically dead Palestinians for their cause. They want the more dead, the better.
So they end up in this upside-down Orwellian world where Israelis killing civilians becomes an unforgivable transgression against Israelis.
It is hard to come away with any feeling but that we are in the midst of a world gone mad. Last week, I found a quote of many years ago by Golda Meir, one of Israel's early leaders, which might have been said yesterday. We can forgive the Arabs for killing our children, she said, but we can never forgive them for forcing us to kill their children.
It's not difficult to imagine Americans identifying with Palestinians who are suffering, but they need to be able to see that suffering on their television screens and in their newspapers.
Israel said today its new offensive is targeting terrorists.
And when your sense of the coverage is that there's something that these people did to deserve this, or that they are affiliated with terrorists and terrorist-minded governments, the fallout of that is an inability to identify with people who are suffering in far greater numbers and in far greater proportion than their Israeli counterparts.
Since the invention of the printing press, there's been a battle to control disseminated information. In the early 1900s, oil tycoon John D. Rockefeller took control of every newspaper and news editor of his era. He became America's first billionaire, paving the way for the power-hungry ever since. Thus began the gold rush for the modern world's most precious resource, the narrative.
Do you have any people being paid by the CIA who are contributing to a major circulation American journal?
During a Senate committee investigation, it was revealed that the CIA had been conducting a covert operation to infiltrate and control U.S. media. They called it Operation Mockingbird.
We do have people who submit pieces to American journals. Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks? This, I think, gets into the kind of details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
Over 3,000 CIA contracted and trained operatives were placed in key positions within top media outlets. Posing as editors and journalists, these well-paid actors never dared to question the effect of their lies on the world beyond their cozy studio.
How often does the CIA manipulate the media in this way?
It goes beyond your wildest imagination. Setting up student organizations so they could draw radical students in. 5,000 university professors co-opted to help the CIA manipulate people's minds. Journalists in the U.S., including big-name journalists, co-opted to function routinely to help the CIA put out stories and biases to the world.
As this 1952 CIA memo says, the aim is controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will.
It's a great brainwashing process to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interest of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
Would you say that continues today?
Well, I would think probably for a reporter it would continue today, but because of all of the revelations, I think you've got to be much more careful about it.
So how do we know that Operation Mockingbird still isn't in effect? Well, we don't.
It was the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that opened the door for predatory corporations to monopolize the industries of print and broadcast.
This bill protects consumers against monopolies. It guarantees the diversity of voices.
Today, a handful of corporate empires own and control the vast majority of everything you read, hear, and watch. From the biggest movie studios, television and radio networks, newspapers and magazines, to the vast universe of internet news and entertainment sites.
Amazon has transformed its operations in response to COVID-19 to protect employees and keep packages flowing.
The company is keeping its employees safe and healthy while still delivering those packages to your doorstep. The company is keeping its employees safe. The company is keeping its employees safe. Millions of Americans staying at home are relying on Amazon.
And that is how it works. It's like a house of mirrors, where you're seeing the same thing over and over and over again, except it's distorted.
There's an industry that is paid to go after and target journalists, whistleblowers, and inundate our consciousness and the images we see to try to ruin, destroy, or smear the idea that they don't like or the person who's delivering it.
You smear somebody with falsehoods and all the rest, and then you merchandise it. And then you write it, and they'll say, see, it's reported in the press, so they have that validation that the press reported the smear, and then it's called the wrap-up smear. Now I'm going to merchandise the press's report on the smear that we made. And it's a tactic.
Welcome back, everybody.
News personalities are not the only high-paid actors to serve the propaganda machine. Most late-night talk shows are owned by the same corporate overlords and thus follow the same script, only laced with a laugh.
Our main story tonight concerns conspiracy theories.
Last Week Tonight with John Oliver featured a skit entitled Coronavirus Conspiracy Theories.
Like the claim that the moon landing was faked.
First thing to note here is that Mr. Oliver opens with commentary about conspiracy theories that are completely unrelated to coronavirus. This is a standard tactic used by propagandists to set a tone so that anything that follows will be seen through the lens of absurdity.
Plandemic, a pseudo-documentary filled with a hodgepodge of conspiracy theories.
Mr. Oliver then does his best to debunk Dr. Judy's claim that she was arrested but never charged with a crime.
She was absolutely criminally charged.
This was not an oversight, but a blatant lie. Prior to the taping of this episode, Mr. Oliver had the official arrest documents that clearly prove that Dr. Judy was never charged with a crime. Mr. Oliver then attempts to debunk the idea that a beach, aka nature, holds any value in boosting our body's natural immune system. Instead of challenging the point with science, he kills it with a smear.
Everything that you just said is insane.
Television is not the truth. We deal in illusions, man. None of it is true. But you people sit there day after day, night after night, all ages, colors, creeds. We're all you know. You're beginning to believe the illusions we're spinning here. You're beginning to think that the tube is reality and that your own lives are unreal. This is mass madness, you maniacs. In God's name, you people are the real thing. We are the illusion. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
The influence war continued by the fourth unelected branch of government to reclaim the presidency from a duly elected man who wanted to give power back to the people. all agency assets were deployed, and we witnessed a system-wide attack on a sitting president.
Let me ask you, I don't know if you have seen this. I don't want to blindside you with this. This is the latest statement, latest tweet, as you were just saying. Intelligence briefing on so-called Russian hacking was delayed until Friday. Perhaps more time needed to build a case. Very strange. He's taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them.
Rachel Maddow's whole show is this one big conspiracy theory. One big conspiracy theory with no evidence. And she's linked everything to that conspiracy. She said Rex Tillerson, the head of this ex-CEO of Exxon, was a Putin puppet. She said that about him. That's called McCarthyism. That's red baiting.
What they're really upset about is, when was the last time we ever heard a president attack, quote, the deep state, end quote? He's not attacking some rogue outfit in Afghanistan that's an offshoot and maybe under contract. He's attacking the military-industrial complex's core secrecy operations. And that is freaking out people at the CIA, especially career people who have never been fingered that way from the White House.
Now, apparently this was a year before the election. Now, he called it fake news. You know, he always does that. And added information is being illegally given to the failing New York Times and the Washington Post by the Intelligence Committee, NSA, and FBI. Well, just like Russia.
You know, he questioned the integrity of the intelligence agencies. What does he expect? Does he expect them to love him and not leak stuff? Because he started this war with the intelligence agencies, and this is what you're getting now.
So I guess someone over at Super Deluxe Cuts figured this out, and they put this together. Here we go.
Donald Trump's done. He's done. There's no question about that. He's done.
Breaking news.
A bombshell.
Today is a turning point. Today was historically bad for President Trump.
Today was a turning point.
A turning point.
We're at a turning point here.
The beginning of the end for the Trump presidency.
The beginning of the end.
And breaking news.
We have another bombshell.
Mike Pence might have to assume the office of the presidency.
The call for impeachment.
Rumblings of the word impeachment.
Breaking news.
Another bombshell out of the White House.
I believe this is the beginning of the end.
I do too.
It's really the beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
He may be feeling the walls closing in on him.
All the walls closing in on him.
The walls closing in on him.
Breaking news, a new bombshell. One astrologer says this means the beginning of the end for President Donald Trump. The beginning of the end of the Trump presidency. Trump will resign. Trump is going to resign.
Is this the tipping point? I know we've said it over and over.
You think this is a tipping point?
And over and over.
This is a tipping point.
And over and over. Breaking news, President Trump off the rails.
It was the beginning of the end today.
It's the beginning of the end.
It reminds me a lot of the last days of Nixon.
Breaking news tonight, new bombshell.
This is the beginning, not the end. The beginning of the end.
The walls are closing in.
The walls closing in.
The walls closing in.
None of these people are embarrassed. None of them are embarrassed. None of them are ridiculed. None of them are called conspiracy theorists. None of them. You know why? Because they're the establishment doing it. But you say one thing against this, they literally, if you debunk this conspiracy theory, they'll literally call you a conspiracy theorist for not buying into this. That's how effed up things are. There's more to this.
Another bombshell.
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 This is a bombshell. It is a bombshell.
I am beginning to resent the word bombshell.
Well, I think that the propaganda that batters us all is so, repetitious and monotone, precisely because it is at the service of a kind of single, dominant, use the word hegemon. I think that's the truth. That's the case,
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are concerned about trouble and trying to get irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
Now, the elite media are the sort of the agenda-setting media.
that means the New York Times, the Washington Post, the major television channels, and so on, they set the general framework. Local media more or less adapt to their structure.
False news has become all too common on social media. An agenda to control exactly what people think, and this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Any rational human being with even minimal history of the United States and the CIA would take everything that the CIA says with a huge grain of salt. I would call it actually a dose of rational skepticism, given how many times in the past that agency has lied and been in error. You know, of course, don't you, that the Iraq War was started because that agency said that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and was in an alliance with Al-Qaeda, something that turned out to be tragically untrue.
And I know,
so,
of course,
people would treat those claims skeptically.
Okay.
Post 9/11 era opened an opportunity to rehabilitate their image, gain new approval in the public eye. That now they're a force for good. And all that assassination and death squad stuff, well, that's all in the past. Their current rebrand is just the latest phase of this makeover. And in a climate where they now have widespread acceptance in popular culture, academia, and news media. Which is why it's so important to document their true legacy and explore why these operations are not just part of their history, but part of their present.
Do you have any people paid by the CIA who are working for television networks?
This, I think, gets into the kind of getting into the details, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to get into in executive session.
Hey, Anderson, we had a great interview last time. I was wondering if you get a chance to look into Operation Mockingbird? You know what that is.
You're talking about something, what, from the 1950s, dude?
1970s, official declassified program, how the CIA infiltrated the mainstream media from the higher ups.
Right.
It's declassified.
I read about it in college, yes, I do. Thanks.
Do you think it's something that could possibly be happening today?
I have no comment for you, thanks, dude.
Why not? I mean, you didn't have any journalistic training except CIA training. I mean, I just wanted to know what you think of German reporter Off Otte, who said the CIA bribed him and extorted him to publish news stories.
To manipulate people, to make propaganda against Russia, and it is not right what my colleagues do and have done in the past, because they are bribed to betray the people working for Central Intelligence Agency or other American agencies.
So Anderson, what influence do you think the CIA has when it comes to mainstream media?
Dude, you're being just ridiculous.
I mean, it's time. It's time to ask really the hard questions.
And this is not only politicians, this is journalists too. And I just have written in the book how we have betrayed in the past our readers just to push for war, because I don't want this anymore. I'm fed up with this propaganda. I was supported by the Central Intelligence Agency, by the CIA. Why? Because I should be pro-American. I'm fed up with it. I don't want to do it anymore. I've just written a book not to earn money. No, it will cause a lot of trouble for me. To give the people in this country, in Germany, in Europe, and all over the world, a glimpse of what goes up behind the closed doors. It is not right what I have done in the past, to manipulate people, to make propaganda against Russia, and it is not right what my colleagues do and have done in the past. And American media tries to bring war to the people in Europe, to bring war to Russia.
The Russian thing is just a big nothing burger. Really? The Russian thing is just a big nothing burger. Really?
When you talk about manufacturing of consent, whose consent is being manufactured?
We can, to start with, there are two different groups. We can get into more detail, but at the first level of approximation, there's two targets for propaganda. One is what's sometimes called the political class. Now, their consent is crucial. It's one group that has to be deeply indoctrinated. Then there's maybe 80% of the population whose main function is to follow orders and not to think, and not to pay attention to anything.
The internet has become the most important device for revealing the truth, at least since the beginning of the printing press. It has become the #1 antidote to TV. Democracies are always lied into war. It's not just lies by intelligence analysts, it's lies by the big media machine. And what is in the big media machine? Well, it's the various institutions that get too comfortable and too close to the table of power, the very table that they are meant to be reporting on and policing and getting into the historic record.
And when they can't control the flow of information, and the people embrace their independence and free thinking, it's standard practice to deploy a crisis. Control by fear.
China's new and deadly coronavirus has been reported here in the U.S.
The CDC tonight says the second of what potentially could be a series of coronavirus cases has appeared in the United States. The latest patient, a woman diagnosed in Chicago after returning from Wuhan, China.
It's very likely that rich countries who uniformly throughout their country do a serious shutdown, that they will be able to avoid a high percentage of their population getting infected. That's what the exemplars, like some of the work in China and South Korea, are telling us.
The remarkable rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines offers great hope, but these vaccines need to reach everyone, everywhere as quickly as possible. This is a matter of fairness and justice.
This is the $15 million mansion where Antonio Guterres lives, and you see, he's got 2 separate UN security cars. These guys are driving in and they're driving out. No masks, man. Check it out. UN car, smoker, no mask.
We need greater trust. For any vaccine to work, the majority of men, women, and children across the globe need to be willing to accept it.
See, this is not quarantine. This is a violation of New York City health regulations.
Turning our attention, Rachel, to young Hollywood and the vaccine.
Oh.
All right, look at this sexy shot, Sophie and Joe.
No surprise, they turned to entertainment to promote this.
Britney Spears and Sam Asghari, her boyfriend.
It was nothing. I felt nothing. This is becoming a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
They want obedient world citizens.
Small business, the ones that aren't publicly traded, they're dropping like flies after a government-mandated shutdown because they're non-essential. The people who work there are non-essential. It's hard enough to run a small business. How about when the government says you're closed and the landlord says, I don't care? That's the thing about this pandemic. It's been one of the greatest wealth transfers in history, and it's a wealth transfer that was mandated by the state. I think that it'll have a horrible effect on our country.
The unified world governments decide which businesses get to be open and which ones get shut down. Who can and can't work? This story has come a long way since the CIA fighting the Iron Curtain. They became it. This wasn't a pandemic. This was an infodemic.
With a quote from Winston Churchill: "The farther you look behind, the farther you can see ahead."
The Atlantic Council is an American think tank in the field of international affairs for NATO countries, and founded in 1961. On their website, they have an article called Shaping a New Democratic World Order that says, since the end of World War II, the United States and its allies across Europe and the Asia Pacific have led to the establishment of a rules-based order. Sounds like some Winston Churchill world citizen stuff. And this idea is embraced in Ukraine.
We had 3 revolutions in our country when we did not agree with what was going on with the direction of where we're moving in. But right now, it's a critical time because we know that we not only fight for Ukraine, we fight for this new world order for the democratic countries.
And former CIA director, President George H.W. Bush.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
There exists a persistent desire for a unified world government. As the Atlantic Council calls it, a democratic world order. But the harsh reality is, the democratic aspect is in name only. You can't be pro-democracy while fixing elections and overthrowing governments in other nations. To understand how the United States and the faceless aspects of the agencies use actors, we start with Sean Penn.
Sean Penn is here. The actor, director, humanitarian, and 2-time Academy Award winner is in New York, having just returned from Haiti. He rushed to that country just days after a devastating earthquake in January killed nearly 300,000 people. He formed an NGO called JP Haiti Relief Organization. Today, Sean Penn is running one of Haiti's largest and most efficient camps.
There's been a lot of tug-of-wars between the government of Haiti and the international aid organizations.
Including the United Nations.
Including the United Nations. That because, for example, USAID, again an organization that has a lot of goodwill in it, it also moves with the political agendas of the United States government. The Préval government was, by any conventional measure, moving forward.
At the time the earthquake struck, this government was getting better.
They don't have control of the money. It's the World Bank, it's the Clinton Foundation. They have the first say over the reconstruction money.
This is a piece about you in the Vanity Fair magazine. To read that, you get a sense that you have access to the levers of power in the U.S. government. You testified before Congress. The military there has been almost partners with you in terms of what you're trying to do. You know people in the State Department at the Deputy Assistant Secretary of State level, and certainly
Sean Penn, a film actor of the new agency. What operations are Hollywood helping with these days? Sean Penn has a string of unique events in his real-life story, including meeting with drug lord El Chapo before his arrest. Also, an assassination operation in Haiti, in which a former driver and security personnel from the JP Haiti Relief Organization days was apprehended as a suspect for this agency coup operation. And now Sean Penn runs CORE, his new nonprofit, where he has continued influence in key locations around the world and funding from those foundations, again, like CAA. This creates the perfect opportunity for Sean Penn to star in a new role in Ukraine, a hotbed of agency activity.
Did you know that the current president of Ukraine was an actor who played the president of Ukraine on a show that a production company that he himself started created? Did he pull off the biggest psyop of all time?
As someone who worked in intelligence, it's exhilarating to see people wake up and get it. This is an influence operation, a psyop. Having participated in fixing elections, specifically in the Ukraine, here's what they did. It took an actor from a popular TV show called Servant of the People, used to reality hack the population into accepting him as a legitimate candidate. That was effective. Politicians are actors too. In 2014, Ukraine had a revolution just like the many CIA coup operations of the past. This one has all the same signs.
Осуществляется проект Техком, в рамках которого ведется подготовка к разжиганию гражданской войны на Украине.
So, before the coup, the U.S. State Department was involved to have their influence on the outcome of the election.
The highest-ranking State Department official, who presumably represents the Obama administration, and the American ambassador in Kiev are, to put it in blunt terms, plotting a coup d'etat against the elected president of Ukraine.
The most blatant coup in history, because it was advertised 2.5 weeks in advance on YouTube.
We could land jelly side up on this one if we move fast. So let me work on Klitschko.
So on that piece, Jeff, when I wrote the note, Sullivan's come back to me VFR saying you need Biden, and I said probably tomorrow for an attaboy and to get the deets to stick. So
Okay.
Biden's willing.
Okay, great.
They even got a Netflix deal, another Hollywood wartime production. Zelensky was presented on the show as a low-income teacher. But in reality, he's a wealthy businessman connected to Igor Kolomoisky, a billionaire Ukrainian oligarch.
We'd visited Zelensky's campaign headquarters. It has all the feel of a tech startup. But the man himself gives very few interviews.
Every time Zelensky speaks Russian, the crowd here start to boo and to say shame. He does look as though he's struggling more than Petro Poroshenko. And even though Zelensky called this debate, the Poroshenko side of the stadium is quite a lot more full than the Zelensky side.
The popularity of the show, and then renaming a political party the same name, succeeded in convincing the people that a stolen election was a legitimate one. Agency coups are bloodless takeovers of nations when they can rig your elections. It was Joe Biden who needed this outcome the most. He couldn't run for president in the USA if criminal corruption was exposed in Ukraine. I even warned about it on Twitter. In 2020, I heard the conversation at the cyber conference in Munich, February 2019. They know why Joe is slow to run for office. I heard it all, but then Twitter deleted my account.
Eat my shorts.
How will Biden change the 2020 race?
He has never run a major campaign where he is the front runner from the start, right? He was Barack Obama's running mate twice, but that's a supporting role. So now he's the starring actor in this campaign.
You overthrew Ukraine in 2014! You overthrew the legitimate Ukraine in 2014!
The 2014 Ukraine elections had events that repeated during the 2020 U.S. elections. An article by Christian Science Monitor on the Ukraine election preserves the record. They say, in the wee hours of the morning after polls closed, as results flowed in from Ukrainian election districts, internet links feeding that data to the vote tally system were hit with a barrage of fake data packets. From about 1 to 3 a.m. on May 26th, election results were blocked, delaying the final tally until early morning, a preliminary report by international election observers recounted. Wait, they stopped counting in the middle of the night? Sound familiar?
6 counties, by the way, I think it's 7 total, that have said they will not count mail ballots tonight. And all those counties were won easily by Donald Trump in 2016.
It's also worth noting that the Obama administration sent $50 million to Ukraine in the form of aid to help ensure democratic elections. Remarkable timing 1 month before elections were held.
Of the United States, we're looking at $53 million in further assistance, crucial.
I put this in my 2020 election affidavit. It's over 30 pages, and to date, no one has disproved it.
After 4 long, tense days, we've reached
A historic moment in this election. We can now project the winner of the presidential race. CNN projects Joseph R. Biden Jr. is elected the 46th president of the United States. We're able to make this projection because CNN projects Biden wins Pennsylvania.
The 2020 election was a blatant theft by the agencies with a criminal cover-up.
They're not willing to acknowledge we won at this point is not of much consequence in our planning.
The stolen power from the people by the fourth unelected branch of government allowed for the agencies to steal back the presidency. But the 4 years of Trump in office was enough to give the people time to understand how to take back their republic of self-government.
Proud of what we have achieved together.
When you're a global power broker and you can seize the White House,
I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., do solemnly swear.
It's a large return on investment. Thanks to the Hunter Biden laptop that was intentionally left behind, we learned how Joe used Hunter in almost a conservatorship type way to maximize the cash out. While keeping his son poor, he made his dad millions. Also, German email server used by both Joe and Barack Obama to avoid U.S. surveillance. First, an internship for Naomi Biden with her own CAA email address. Then there's Hunter coordinating speaking contracts for his father. Joe Biden himself was signed on with CAA. And the news that Joe sealed a China deal for Hollywood and CAA, courtesy of the Biden family business dealings. These connections with China run deep, both for the Bidens and Hollywood. But don't worry, all this is fake news, according to the 50 spies who lied. You know, former agency. And last of all, from the Hunter Biden laptop, is Obama and CAA organizing an event for women. Another foundation/nonprofit to psyop the people. Kind of like the CIA did in its early days of cultural infiltration. The United States of America, the fourth unelected branch of government, consumed more and more tax dollars.
I know a lot of people want to send blankets or water. Just send your cash. One of the things that President will do is to make sure your money is spent wisely.
And became a massive runaway agency apparatus who passed laws subverting U.S. constitutional law, like the 2001 Patriot Act.
The bulk collection of all Americans' phone records, all of the time, is a direct violation of the Fourth Amendment. The Second Appeals Court has ruled it illegal. The president began this program by executive order. He should immediately end it through executive order.
This is a coalition of classified, public, and privatized assets with the power to overthrow governments, including their own. And with that much captured authority, they were allowed to get away with a lot, from Hollywood to around the world.
WikiLeaks released what it claims are thousands of confidential CIA documents. They allegedly show that the spy agency worked to develop tools to hack into devices like Apple and Android smartphones, Samsung TVs, and vehicle control systems.
To WikiLeaks, the hacking tools included malware and viruses designed to attack Apple's iOS, Google Android, and Microsoft Windows. They allegedly allowed the CIA to access a smartphone user's location and messages, as well as control a phone's microphone and camera.
It's actually a totalitarian process that's been used down through history. I mean, that's what totalitarian dictators, states, that's what they want to do. They want to know everything about the population so they can control it. That was the idea behind the Soviet Union, the East German Stasi, that was their idea, and the Gestapo and the SS, and down through history, many others.
CISA facilitates and expands surveillance. It would allow companies to openly share your emails, phone calls, text messages, credit cards, social security information, anything with Homeland Security. And then Homeland Security curates it and immediately shares it to government agencies like the Department of Defense, the FBI, and of course, the NSA. It could also share that info with other companies if they think it poses any kind of cybersecurity threat.
Fire Department 97, what's the address of the emergency?
Oh, somebody's passed out.
Somebody what?
My daughter's passed out.
The lab which conducted the test suggested one possible explanation would be an exposure to these metals or toxins administered by a third-party perpetrator with likely criminal intent.
Brittany was named as an official witness in our case that was at the time proceeding against Homeland Security. So you can imagine what would happen if Brittany was to walk through the doors to testify in our case. There would be a lot of media.
Angelo, do you suspect somebody responsible for poisoning her?
Yeah, I do really, but I'd rather not speak about that.
Brittany did tell me she was under surveillance, and incidentally, so was I.
Do you have any advice for a young girl moving to Hollywood?
I'll get lively with us. Harvey Weinstein invites you to a private party and Four Seasons stuff.
You know, this is not unique. This goes on at the most horrendous high levels.
I want to know who is taking these actresses up to his room. And I'd like to know if people say they had a story, that reporters say they had a story and didn't run it. I'd like to know why they didn't tell the story in the last 10 years.
You mean the CIA talent in Mockingbird CIA News didn't report on this? Just another day in Hollywood.
I would have liked to have known this. You know, that this man was assaulting women and was silencing women.
Harvey, why'd you hire Black Cube?
For days like this.
For people in positions of power in large corporations, the tools and operations developed by government intelligence agencies have become available to the private sector. Spies, covert and private investigators, standard agency actions from governments around the world available to those who can afford it.
I don't think most people are aware of the exotic and extreme tools at the disposal of the most powerful and wealthy men in America when they are bent at silencing accusations against them.
Courtney Love tweeted Saturday saying, although I wasn't one of his victims, I was eternally banned by CAA for speaking out against Harvey Weinstein.
Epstein was hiding in plain sight. We all knew about him. We all knew what he was doing. But we had no one that was, no legal aspect that would go after him. They were afraid of him. For whatever reason, they were afraid of him.
We've seen the same thing happen with Epstein with these scientists that we saw happen in Hollywood and we saw happen up on Wall Street in New York, where he starts spreading money around.
The scientist who's funded by Jeffrey Epstein is creating these interactive dolls that go into the bedroom of some little girl that records what she's saying, watches what she's doing, feeds this information back to some system somewhere, some mainframe. The fact that Epstein's behind it, you have to ask, what was the plan?
Okay, wow. That just kind of scared me, as well as give it up for little Sophia, everybody. Bye-bye. I love that.
And my guess is it represents some very powerful structure that we tripped over, that this was constructed. I mean, we have a very famous case of a guy named Eli Cohn, who was fitted with a backstory and became a playboy in Damascus and held orgies, if I understand correctly, where he collected information and leverage against people in the Syrian government. If you take that situation, this looks remarkably similar. We've got a guy who was apparently a math teacher at a private high school, and the next thing we know, he's avoided jail in some sort of financial scandal, and he's suddenly set up as a mystery financier with connections to absolutely everyone in the top echelons of power.
I know that Jeffrey was selling arms.
How do you know that?
Where the money comes from, nobody knows. If you want to get somebody in the show, you'll never get them, but Leslie Wexner, the fellow who owned the Limited and Victoria's Secret, and was very involved with Epstein in terms of business, as much as we know.
Okay, so he would know. He would know where.
He knows
Epstein's
some stuff. I mean,
comes
he
from.
had something to do with Epstein getting that 28,000 square foot apartment,
okay.
which I don't know. It seemed like Epstein never paid for it. How could we, since 2006, not pay any attention to the story?
When I met Jeffrey Epstein, which might have been something like 2002, before he was charged with sex crime violations in Florida, it was like somebody created a Gatsby-like character out of a Ralph Lauren lookalike who had apparently recently been a math teacher at a private high school. Nothing added up. I did not believe that Jeffrey Epstein was a hedge fund manager. And I, in fact, called my wife at the time and I said, this man appears to be a construct. And she said, what do you mean by a construct? I said, it's like they've hired an actor to play a hedge fund manager.
We did hear that today, apparently, President Trump had some sort of falling out with Epstein, but he didn't elaborate. We do know that he did kick him out of Mar-a-Lago at one point. What can you tell us about that?
Well, there are two incidents there. One was apparently there was a member and Epstein was inappropriate with the member's daughter. The other piece, and I interviewed a woman who would run the spa there, and I said, did you know Jeffrey Epstein? She said, oh, yes. She said, he used to come over to the spa, and I found him to be inappropriate with the girls, the young girls there. And she said, I went to Mr. Trump, and he threw him right out.
Epstein used blackmail to manipulate people. Maintaining a control file is a very old trick of the agencies and still used today. French modeling agent Jean-Luc Brunel has started agencies with Epstein, and both share a long history.
It's a meat market. You are there for the purpose of somebody wanting to take you home to bed. He's got the agency, he's got the girls. His friends say, oh, Jean-Luc, I'd like to meet some girls, or we're having a party tonight. Can you bring some girls?
And what happens if you say no?
You don't work.
You actually have known that he has made someone pay a professional penalty for saying no.
I know, I paid a penalty for saying no.
But his usefulness eventually came to an end. Epstein and Jean-Luc both died in prison by suicide, allegedly. Defeating the USSR, we thought we escaped controlling how people think. But Hollywood eventually became what it was used to fight against, controlling how people think. The massive network of collusion will surprise you.
Well, the industry is severely compromised by its own politics, and that's why there's nothing good or original on any of it. So, we're living under censorship, and it's politically based. And I think the networks, particularly the one I work for, the head of my network in his interview, Bob Iger, said the first phone call he made about my gaffe on Twitter was to Valerie Jarrett. It's all a Jussie Smollett world in TV and in entertainment, and it's all controlled, and they just use it to hate everybody so they can raise funds. It's just all a big scam from top to bottom. It's all a Jussie Smollett world.
They guide your thoughts. Division is their goal. And as long as we're occupied fighting against each other, we can't see what they're doing.
Jussie Smollett convicted on 5 of the 6 counts he was facing after being accused of staging a hate crime.
A fake hate crime to pass a lynching bill.
The idea that we would not be taking the issue of lynching seriously is an insult. An insult to Senator Booker, to Senator Tim Scott, and myself, and all of the senators, past and present, who have understood this is part of the great stain of America's history. Mr. President, in 2018, the Senate unanimously passed bipartisan anti-lynching legislation, which I proudly introduced with the only other black members of this body, Senator Cory Booker and Senator Tim Scott. It was a historic moment. It marked the first time in the history of our country that federal anti-lynching legislation had been passed by the United States Senate. It passed again by unanimous consent in 2019.
This is Obama, y'all. And nobody in this body needs a lecture on lynching and how horrible it is. I used to always tell reporters when they would try to stir up trouble between our camps, I would say, wait a minute, Kamala is my sister and there's some sibling rivalry, but don't let it be mistaken. In the end, she will always be family.
But this publicity stunt was a scar that Chicago didn't earn and certainly didn't deserve. To make things worse, the accusations within this phony attack received national attention for weeks. Celebrities, news commentators, and even presidential candidates weighed in on something that was choreographed by an actor.
Manufacturing evidence, fake tweets, fake texts, fake conversations, which would be a crime if any of us presented them in a court of law. But they get to do it.
Special Prosecutor Dan Webb says Kim Foxx in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office may have violated legal ethics by abusing its discretion. Foxx's office initially charged the actor with 16 counts and then, in an unannounced hearing, dropped the case.
Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like in
and
college,
I inhaled. I did inhale.
Okay.
Press Secretary Jen Psaki confirms that 5 White House staffers are no longer employed for their previous marijuana use.
NXIVM, having been exposed for running a sex cult with human trafficking and domestic slavery, reveals the dark side of Hollywood. With a lengthy list of actresses being involved and charged with crimes. It was also discovered that members were asked to donate to Hillary Clinton while also being paid back in order to bypass campaign donation limits on behalf of Claire Bronfman, who pled guilty for her involvement. These are campaign finance violations. Her father has a long history with the Clinton family and even received the Medal of Freedom from Bill Clinton. The coalition of Hollywood and the Democrat Party is crystal clear. And NXIVM even funded a children's program
Called the Rainbow Cultural Garden.
Our youth are the most susceptible, and CAA influences children. Their foundation funds STEM, Teach America, Black Lives Matter, and the Sunrise Movement, supported by Democrats. They remind me of a 60s and 70s youth movement.
Yeah, they are.
We're not looking at it from a place of, can we do this? Are we the right people? Is this the right time? Like, we have no other choice.
My state cannot lose here. It is life or death for Kentucky right now.
There's no way to be committed to nonviolence in the middle of the most violent society that history's ever created.
Weathermen are the militant faction of the Students for a Democratic Society. Only one of the 13 is now in custody.
This system is going to be overthrown. It's going to mean a fight. And it's going to mean a lot of white people risking a lot of things when they finally join on the side of the black people and the people of Vietnam and around the world who have already begun the fight.
We are making them face us. We are making them see the future. And we are making this issue an unavoidable political priority in this country. And you are a part of that.
That group, the Sunrise Movement, has public school teachers recruiting in the classroom from as young as middle school age. And it's an organization that motivates students to break laws. In order to get their agents of change into positions quicker, Teach America has an expedited process to get new teachers into the classrooms faster, where they influence the minds of young children. In other words, reality hacking, resulting in some classrooms functioning as indoctrination centers for the New World Order, supported by the Democrat and Republican parties. In the same way, the USSR demanded everyone conform to one way of thinking. This targeting of susceptible youth has the same goal.
Standing here at the center of our nation's power, I can think only of everyone who's been made to feel powerless by their abusers, by a system that failed to protect them. Anyone who's been in those situations will tell you just how far they feel from the power concentrated here in this building. The power to pass laws that might have prevented their pain in the first place. The idea of sovereignty of a family home is being used to abuse the members within it.
Wait, they want to end sovereignty of the home? Take away parents' rights? So the hidden objective of this actor is to give the government more rights over children. BuzzFeed releases a decades-long investigation into CIA sex crimes. Over the past 14 years, the Central Intelligence Agency has secretly amassed credible evidence that at least 10 of its employees and contractors committed sexual crimes involving children. Only one of the individuals was ever charged with a crime because the agency wanted to protect its sources and methods.
Hollywood is the one that keeps all this power structure and all this culture of racism and sexism and classism and genderism and all of it in place. They continually feed it, and they make a lot of money doing it. And they do it at the behest of their masters who run everything.
An overt operation, but overlooked until recently, is Davos World Economic Forum. Unifying political power, nonprofits, and corporations with ideas of world citizens who own nothing and they will be happy.
The very idea of human being some sort of natural concept is really going to change.
Our bodies will be so high-tech, we won't be able to really distinguish between what's natural and what's artificial.
That's transhumanism, the merging of humans with computers and machines for global control nonetheless. But did anyone vote for this?
One of the features of this fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing, but it changes us.
Biological knowledge multiplied by computing power, multiplied by data, equals the ability to hack humans. A system that understands us better than we understand ourselves can predict our feelings and decisions, can manipulate our feelings and decisions, and can ultimately make decisions for us. Now, in the past, many tyrants and governments wanted to do it, but nobody understood biology well enough. And nobody had enough computing power and data to hack millions of people. Neither the Gestapo nor the KGB could do it. But soon,
the agencies have been hacking human minds for decades.
At least some corporations and governments will be able to systematically hack all the people. We are now hackable animals.
Not only psychologically hacking humans, they're hacking biologically too.
In different corners of the globe, pioneering scientists use completely different ways of turning the coronavirus into a vaccine.
We're aiming to have something that's ready to go into humans in 16 weeks' time.
The shape of the coronavirus spike protein before the virus meets our cells is what triggers the most protective antibody response. So Keith must make the spike protein in the lab, locking it into exactly the same shape by adding another protein that acts a bit like a clamp. And that protein is a tiny fragment of HIV.
Is a tiny fragment of HIV.
Yesterday, Moderna began clinical trials for an HIV vaccine. It developed the shot with the nonprofit International AIDS Vaccine Initiative. Like the COVID vaccine, it uses mRNA technology to teach our cells how to fight HIV.
When you see it all, the world seems a mess and growing dark.
It's natural to turn to the election of politicians and civic leaders to help lead us out of a crisis.
But the sad reality is the agency and the global alliance decides who gets to run and who gets to debate.
Now to an extraordinary development in the presidential campaign. Hillary Clinton, the 2016 nominee, called Tulsi Gabbard, one of the current candidates, quote, the favorite of the Russians.
On a podcast interview, Clinton said, quote, they're grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far.
Presidential hopeful Tulsi Gabbard addressing a defamation lawsuit filed today against Hillary Clinton, seeking $50 million after lawyers for Gabbard say she suffered actual significant and professional damages.
I will not stand by and allow Hillary Clinton or anyone else to smear me as a traitor to the country that I love. So the lawsuit that I filed is to hold her accountable for those defamatory statements that she made.
The only woman candidate left in the race, the only woman of color, and the first female combat veteran ever to run for the presidency has a voice. The DNC and their corporate media partners say, no thanks.
As of now, the criteria doesn't work. You're not going to be there.
Which, by the way, they just changed it. They just changed it.
They have changed it throughout the race. It would seem at times to include people.
So after Super Tuesday, based on the qualifications, I would have been on the debate stage, and then they changed it.
Back in 2016, we put out a call for nominations, trying to capture the diversity of background, of experience of the American electorate, the people that aren't currently represented in office. We got over 10,000 nominations. Out of those 10,000 nominations, we found Alexandria.
My brother told me that he had sent my nomination in the summer, but I was like literally working out of a restaurant, and I was like, there's no way.
A casting call. They had a casting call. They cast Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in the role of Congresswoman. And they did this so they could promote their own agenda.
Bring in people in a nominating process, and then they would go over their resume and hire them in the same way that you would hire an actress, right? And the idea was that they write the script and these congressmen read the script. Right. And they talk about this in their video. They say, well, you didn't have any interest in running for office before us, right? And she's like, no.
You hadn't thought about running for office or anything at that point, right?
No.
The people who voted for AOC didn't know that she was just parroting, some writer's script.
What was shocking, and it explained her. It totally explained her. How she was saying exactly what Justice Democrats were saying 4 years before. She obviously got the script.
Politicians are actors too, working for special interests or whatever agency cast them. and they stick to the script. This is more common and has been happening for a lot longer than people realize. From a 1990 article on political party recruitment, citing a 1985 survey of county party leaders across the United States, found that 62% of Democratic leaders and 64% of Republican leaders claimed that their organizations were very or somewhat involved in the recruitment of congressional candidates. Also finding that Republican recruitment efforts were substantially increased in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Politicians for many decades have been cast in their roles and expected to stay on script. Do these representatives work for the voters? Or do they work for political parties who selected them and the corporations who fund their election and re-election? Our government system has long lost being of, by, and for the people. Working in the intelligence agencies, you learn to protect information with disinformation, hiding facts and truths from enemies, and letting them see lies to decoy them. Covering the intelligence community is mosaic. It's a puzzle. You protect each piece because you don't know what piece someone else is missing.
You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Truth is the answer to the deceptions. To overcome the psyops and reality hacking, a human cannot be deprogrammed with direct information. They have to draw direct information themselves to break the spell. Stand on the moon and look back to see the big picture. The subversion of the Constitution of the United States of America through the networks of power that exist. The fourth unelected branch of government. Take ownership of your nation. Research them. The networks of funding. Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, world controlling groups, the media empire, ABC, CNN, CBS, Fox News, NBC, entertainment, sports, military generals, CIA assets, propaganda. It's all a big show. A manufacturing of consent, a psychological operation. Everything you have been presented has hacked your reality. You need to own the knowledge and information yourself. You must do the work of research and establish facts for yourself. How do you destroy a tank? From the inside.
As citizens of the United States in the second half of this century, we are learning to live with some uncomfortable realities. We live in a sort of ethical coexistence. We have created another weapons system of secret and subversive action. This, too, given the state of the world, may have been inevitable. The CIA, it is on active duty in a constant, secret, dirty war.
It's digging a big, deep hole for the United States, and the sad thing is that the CIA is an unconstitutional, an extra-constitutional organization. It functions illegally.
More or less following the tactics that we associated with the Communist Party.
1,000 Pieces is a reference to JFK when he said he wanted to splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces after the Bay of Pigs fiasco.
It's not even like, it's like not 3D, it's like a flat wall. The door is painted on. It almost looked like a Hollywood set.
It's the Hollywood-Washington connection.
The people who voted for AOC didn't know that she was just parroting, some writer's script.
It's like they've hired an actor to play a hedge fund manager.
I was eternally banned by CAA for speaking out against Harvey Weinstein.
Hollywood is the one that keeps all this power structure, and they do it at the behest of their masters who run everything.
Today, they're taking almost half of every dollar earned in the United States.
The problem we have is how to reconcile the necessity of the CIA with its secret offenses against our public morality.
I think probably Hollywood is full of CIA agents, and we just don't know it.
The most important question to ask yourself is, who decides your future?
There's no line between the two?
No, Justice Scalia, I would say there
Agencies and their actors, or you? Behold the theater of war, where all the world's a stage. It's time to stand up. We are the news now. The power of the pen is in your hands. Run non-compromised, non-corporate funded candidates for office. It's time to take back our power. Rescue our captured constitutional freedoms in this unknown war. This invisible war on the people. From agencies, reality hacking through your culture. It's decision time. Spectator or participant? You choose. In the meantime, enjoy the show.
Feeling okay? Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling okay? Time to go!
If you can hear me, is there anyone home? Come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. I hear you're feeling down. Well, I can ease your pain and get you on your feet again. Relax, 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 relax. I need some information first. Just the basic facts. Can you show me where it hurts? This is not how I
I just don't think of wearing a mask as such a deep inconvenience. I mean, we ask people to wear pants.
What is the problem? Get over it. Get over this political statement. Just get over it.
What's the big deal? What's the big deal?
It's about keeping our children safe.
Don't think of wearing a mask as such a deep inconvenience. I mean, we ask people to wear pants.
What is the problem? Get over it. Get over this political statement.
Kicked off a plane. Their 2-year-old daughter wouldn't put on her mask.
2-year-old daughter just would not wear a mask.
What's the big deal? What's the big deal?
Her husband, Erhard, tries to put a mask on the toddler, But in true 2-year-old fashion, she isn't having it.
What is the problem? Get over it. Just get over it.
Kicked off a plane because her son finds it difficult to wear a face mask. 3-year-old Orion Scott suffers from sensory processing disorder.
It can make wearing a mask challenging.
I don't think of wearing a mask as such a deep inconvenience. I mean, we ask people to wear pants.
I got a 2-year-old kicked off a flight. JetBlue removed a New York mother and her 6 children from the plane after the toddler refused to wear a face covering. Kept taking off her mask. The coronavirus mask.
What's the big deal?
They were kicked off a Spirit Airlines flight because their 4-year-old son Carter was not wearing a mask. Carter is nonverbal with autism.
What's the big
The
deal?
concerned parent says a teacher tied a mask around the face of his special needs daughter.
The mask was quite tight on her face, which was, of course, obstructing her ability to speak and her ability to breathe.
I don't think of wearing a mask as such a deep inconvenience. I mean, we ask people to wear pants.
Get over it. Get over this political statement. Just get over it.
What's the big deal?
Is removed from a Southwest Airlines.
Says her 3-year-old son, who has autism and a doctor's note, cannot wear a mask.
I just don't think of wearing a mask as such a deep inconvenience. I mean, we ask people to wear pants.
What is the problem? Get over it. Get over this political statement. Just get over it.
What's the big deal? What's the big deal?
The crisis in the Persian Gulf, as grave as it is, also offers a rare opportunity to move toward an historic period of cooperation. Out of these troubled times, our 5th objective, a new world order, can emerge, a new era.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind, peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
This is a system, Neo. That system is our enemy. When you're inside, you look around, what do you see? Businessmen, teachers, lawyers, carpenters, the very minds of the people we are trying to save. But until we do, these people are still a part of that system, and that makes them our enemy. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inert, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it. Were you listening to me, Neo? Or were you looking at the woman in the red dress? I was. Look again.
There's no such thing as a boy or a girl.
The protest in Dublin was one of several around the country. It started in O'Connell Street and made its way across the city centre to Shelburne Road. There, a guarded barrier kept it a few hundred metres from the Israeli embassy. There were calls for the Irish government to support the Palestinians.
The Israeli government, its leaders, its military are saying that they intend to commit genocide, a war crime, ethnic cleansing.
Amongst the Palestinians in Ireland, there is great anxiety about the fate of loved ones in Gaza.
And the people didn't know what to do, no electric, no water, nothing. Yesterday they cut the